They're a pioneering new wave band, still turning out music some 40 years after we first got to know them, in part because, as Luke Burbank explains, when tragedy struck, members of Depeche Mode found a way to carry on.
For a band who put out their first big hit over 40 years ago, Depeche Mode is surprisingly relevant here in 2023.
Someone made me unfast, someone who cares. You're out, that's enough, Jesus.
From late-night TV appearances to selling out stadiums across the U.S. and in Europe.
Whoever wanted, whoever needed is here in my arms.
And it isn't just some nostalgia tour where a band plays their greatest hits at a casino near you. No, Depeche Mode's latest album, Memento Mori, is getting serious airplay.
Our music, if you allow it, will take you somewhere.
And yet, as Dave Gahan, Depeche Mode's lead singer, and Martin Gore, their lead songwriter, began the year with a new album and packed tour schedule, they found themselves somewhere where they'd never been, mourning the loss of their bandmate, Andy Fletcher.
I didn't realize, maybe before we went into this promo trip, how heavy that would be to be asked about that over and over and over again.
Fletch, as they called him, was a founding member of the band and died suddenly last year, just as the album was finished, giving its title, which means remember one's mortality, an eerie new meaning.
Some might say that a lot of these songs were sort of foreboding or something, but, you know, I don't think Martin was probably aware of that.
Heaven's dreaming, thoughtless thoughts, my friends. We know we'll be ghosts again.
When I first started writing songs for this album, I wouldn't have had the idea of calling the album Memento Mori and maybe have some of the songs dealing with death. It just kind of happened like that. Sometimes you do wonder if you tap into something.
Growing up in Basildon, a small town in Essex, England, Martin Gore was one of the first kids around to get a synthesizer, which is why Vince Clarke and Andy Fletcher wanted to start a band with him.
And they immediately saw the potential of the synthesizer that I was using, so they quickly ditched their guitars and their guitar and bass, and then we became an all-electronic band.
Dave Gahan then joined as singer, and the group started making waves in London's underground club scene.
It was easy to go to gigs on the train. We put them in little suitcases, and we'd just travel on the train to the gig.
Soon enough, this English band with a French name and their synthesizers were becoming a hit in Europe. But success in the U.S. would take a bit longer due to lack of radio play and some suspicious music critics.
Thank you.
Every interview would be a battle.
So why don't you use traditional instruments? Of course, that's not a great way to start an interview.
The band finally broke through with U.S. audiences in 1988, playing to a capacity crowd at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, memorably documented by D.A. Pennebaker. Their subsequent album, Violator, went triple platinum, and as for guitars, well, they began appearing in the sound of Depeche Mode as well.
If it's not one of those two, I can usually tell which song it is.
Someone who's not a rock star Why do you need so many different guitars? As a different tuning?
At some point it becomes an addiction.
I think we somehow managed to build this cult following, and we still feel to this day that we're kind of like a cult band, even though we sell a lot of records everywhere.
Martin's right. It's like I think we probably are and have been for many years. We're kind of the biggest alternative band in the world, put it that way.
But success for Depeche Mode was a double-edged sword. Gahan developed a heroin addiction so severe it said Los Angeles paramedics nicknamed him the Cat because he'd overdosed so many times.
It was the time when I wasn't working that got really dark, because there's no one there to balance it out. There's no band, there's no music, there's no, it was just the addiction. And that's all it is. You can call it whatever you like, but once you go down that road, the hardest thing is to drag yourself back out of it. It was for me anyway. I didn't think it would be as hard as what it was.
Was it hard for you, Martin, and the other members of the band to kind of watch what Dave was going through, just as his friends?
I mean, it was difficult at the time, but then, after that, after Dave got clean, for years I went on drinking, and I think that must have been really hard for Dave, because, I wasn't an occasional drinker, and that was in Dave's face all the time.
It's kind of Martin to say that.
Today, both Gore and Gahan are sober and credit music with saving their lives.
Martin, I know Martin feels the same. It was the one thing that always sort of could lift me, change my spirit, change the way I felt, lead me into a different direction, or also into fantasy, into another world. And yeah, it saved me many, many times.